Life with Lucy seemed idyllic, a partnership filled with love, mutual respect, and the fulfillment of a shared dream. We had two wonderful children, Emma, a bright and curious 13-year-old, and Daniel, our mischievous 11-year-old. Our suburban home was a haven of warmth, where evenings were spent playing games or watching movies. It was the kind of life people aspire to, a picture-perfect existence that concealed fractures I didn't yet see. Lucy worked as a customer ambassador at a prominent marketing firm, a role she described as demanding but rewarding. While I couldn't quite pin down what her job entailed, she thrived in her position. I, on the other hand, led the IT team at the same firm. Though our roles rarely intersected professionally, we enjoyed the convenience of carpooling and shared lunch breaks when time allowed. For all her charm and beauty, Lucy had an energy that drew people to her. She was vivacious, with an infectious laugh and a knack for lighting up any room. I admired her from the sidelines, content to support her ambitions while focusing on providing a stable foundation for our family. But looking back, I realize I missed the subtle shifts in her demeanor, moments where she seemed distracted or unusually distant. The first crack appeared when she enthusiastically announced an invitation to an exclusive retreat on a private island owned by William Fellows, one of the firm's most lucrative clients. "He's brilliant, Mark," she said one evening, her eyes sparkling as she described the enigmatic William. "Confident, poised, and incredibly generous. This retreat is a massive opportunity for all of us." I nodded, masking my unease. William Fellows had a reputation for being both charismatic and overbearing, a man who always got what he wanted. Though I knew little about him personally, Lucy's admiration left a sour taste in my mouth. Still, I didn't voice my concerns. Her excitement was genuine, and I didn't want to be the one to dampen her enthusiasm. The trip was scheduled for early spring, a time when the island's pristine beauty would be on full display. Lucy spent days meticulously preparing for the retreat, shopping for elegant outfits and rehearsing potential conversations with William. I watched her with a mix of amusement and unease, wondering why she seemed so invested in impressing him. When I finally voiced my curiosity, she brushed it off with a laugh. "It's just work, Mark. You know how competitive these things can be." On the morning of our departure, the private charter flight to the island felt surreal. The plane's plush interiors and attentive staff were a far cry from the commercial flights we usually took for vacations. As we landed, the island unfolded before us, a paradise of white sand beaches, lush greenery, and luxurious villas. Lucy's excitement was palpable, her smile radiant as she took it all in. The first day passed in a blur of activities. We snorkeled in crystal-clear waters, feasted on gourmet meals, and mingled with colleagues and clients. William made his entrance during the evening dinner, exuding an effortless charm that immediately commanded attention. His gaze lingered on Lucy longer than I liked, but I dismissed it as professional courtesy. After all, she was his primary contact at the firm. The second day brought more opportunities to explore the island, but something about Lucy's behavior felt off. She seemed preoccupied, her laughter forced and her attention elsewhere. At one point, I noticed her and William engaged in an intense conversation by the pool, their heads bent close together. When I approached, she quickly changed the subject, her smile too bright to be genuine. That evening, during a private dinner with William, the facade of normalcy shattered. He invited Lucy and me to join him in his study, a grand room lined with leather-bound books and antique furniture. As we sat, he turned to me with a proposition that left me reeling. "I've had the pleasure of working with Lucy these past months," he began, his tone casual but his words deliberate. "She's an exceptional woman, intelligent, beautiful, and utterly captivating. I'd like to spend the weekend with her, Mark. In exchange, I'm prepared to transfer $100,000 into your account." I stared at him, stunned into silence. The audacity of his offer was beyond anything I could have imagined. But what shocked me more was Lucy's reaction. She didn't protest, didn't recoil in outrage. Instead, she sat quietly, her gaze fixed on the floor. Finally, she spoke, her voice trembling but firm. "I agree." The words hit me like a blow. I turned to her, searching her face for an explanation, but she avoided my eyes. William, ever composed, continued as if nothing had happened. "I'll arrange the details with Lucy. Please, take the rest of the evening to relax and enjoy the island's amenities." The rest of the night was a blur. I wandered the beach aimlessly, my mind racing with questions I couldn't answer. Why had she agreed? What had led her to this moment? And most importantly, what was I supposed to do now? By the time the weekend ended and we returned home, the foundation of our marriage had crumbled. Lucy acted as though nothing had changed, slipping seamlessly back into her role as wife and mother. But for me, everything was different. I couldn't unhear her agreement, couldn't unsee the way she'd looked at William. I didn't confront her immediately. Instead, I began to observe, collecting pieces of a puzzle I didn't want to solve. Every phone call, every late-night text, every unexplained absence became a clue in a narrative I was too afraid to face. My marriage was a lie, and the truth was waiting to destroy everything I thought I knew. Back at home, the veneer of normalcy was impossible to maintain. Lucy resumed her daily routine as if the island weekend had been just another business trip. She kissed me goodbye before heading to work, helped the kids with their homework, and even insisted on hosting a family movie night. Her smile was as radiant as ever, but now it felt like a mask, a barrier concealing the truth. I couldn't look at her without hearing the echo of her words, "I agree." The betrayal was suffocating. I vacillated between fury and despair, unsure whether to confront her or let the silence build until it shattered on its own. The house felt like a stage, and I was merely an actor, playing the role of a dutiful husband while my mind churned with suspicion. It started small, a glance at her phone left unlocked on the kitchen counter, a skim through her emails while she was in the shower. I found nothing incriminating at first, just work correspondence and family messages. But then, one night while she was asleep, I discovered the text thread with William. It wasn't overtly damning, but it was enough. His messages were casual yet intimate, filled with inside jokes and thinly veiled flirtations. Her responses mirrored his tone, her words carrying a familiarity that twisted my stomach. The messages didn't explicitly confirm an affair, but they painted a picture of a relationship far too personal for comfort. I began digging deeper. Her phone records revealed frequent calls to a number I didn't recognize. Cross-referencing it with a reverse lookup, I confirmed it belonged to William. My heart pounded as I scrolled through the call logs, noting their length and timing, always late at night or during her lunch breaks. The damning evidence came from an unexpected place, our shared financial account. Lucy had always managed our household budget, a responsibility I trusted her with implicitly. But when I reviewed our bank statements, I noticed several unexplained withdrawals. Some were for modest amounts, easily excused as everyday expenses. Others, however, were larger, enough to make me question where the money had gone. A closer look revealed the recipient, a high-end boutique specializing in luxury goods. There were no new items in our home to account for the purchases. I felt the walls of my reality closing in. The more I uncovered, the more I realized that the woman I thought I knew was a stranger. I couldn't reconcile the image of Lucy as a loving wife and mother with the evidence piling up against her. One evening, after the kids were in bed, I decided to test her. I casually mentioned that I'd be working late the following Friday and might not make it home for dinner. Her reaction was far too enthusiastic. "Oh, that's fine," she said with a bright smile. "I'll take the kids to my sister's for the evening. You deserve a break." Her response was too convenient, too rehearsed. I knew then that she had plans of her own. When Friday arrived, I left the house as usual but circled back, parking a block away. From my vantage point, I watched as Lucy loaded the kids into the car and drove off. Once she was gone, I waited. It wasn't long before another car pulled up, a sleek black sedan. William stepped out, dressed impeccably as always, and entered my home. My blood boiled as I sat there, powerless to intervene without making a scene. I wanted to storm in, to confront them both, but I knew I needed more than anger to justify my actions. This wasn't just about catching them in the act, it was about dismantling the life we had built on lies. The next day, I contacted a private investigator. His name was Eric Cook, a no-nonsense professional with years of experience in uncovering infidelity. I laid out everything I had found, from the texts and calls to the bank statements and William's late-night visits. I need proof, I told him. Not just for me, but for when I confront her. For when I decide what to do next. Eric assured me he would get the evidence I needed. Over the next few weeks, his team followed Lucy, documenting her every move. The photos and videos they captured were devastating: secret meetings in coffee shops, clandestine dinners, and, finally, a weekend getaway at a luxury resort. The final blow came when Eric handed me a USB drive containing recordings of their conversations. As I listened to William's smooth voice and Lucy's nervous laughter, I felt a rage unlike anything I had ever known. It wasn't just the betrayal, it was the ease with which she had deceived me, the way she had looked me in the eye and lied over and over again. Now I had everything I needed. The question was no longer if I would confront her, but when. Timing was crucial. This wasn't going to be a private showdown, it was going to be a reckoning. Lucy had made her choice, and now it was time for her to face the consequences. Confrontation was inevitable, but I wanted the stage set to my advantage. Every piece of evidence Eric provided had to be used strategically, not just to unmask Lucy but to ensure I could control the fallout for myself and, most importantly, for our children. Emma and Daniel didn't deserve to be caught in the crossfire of their mother's choices. So, I waited, biding my time while meticulously planning my next move. The opportunity came on a Saturday evening. Lucy had been distracted all day, her phone never far from her hand, her gaze distant. She claimed to have a work dinner scheduled, but her demeanor betrayed her. I pretended to believe her, even helping her choose an outfit for the evening. She wore a black dress that clung to her figure, paired with heels I didn't recognize, another recent purchase, no doubt for him. As she left, I kissed her cheek and watched her drive away, knowing exactly where she was headed. I'd seen the reservation Eric uncovered, a private booth at an upscale restaurant downtown. I gave her a 15-minute head start before following, parking discreetly near the entrance. From there, I could see her and William seated in a corner booth, their heads close together, their hands occasionally brushing. It was surreal, watching the woman I loved behave as though I didn't exist, as though the life we built was disposable. My heart ached, but my resolve hardened. This wasn't just about betrayal, it was about reclaiming my dignity and ensuring she faced the consequences of her choices. The next morning, while she was still asleep, I quietly packed a bag for the kids. I'd arranged for them to spend the day with my sister, under the guise of a surprise outing. Emma and Daniel were thrilled, blissfully unaware of the storm brewing at home. Once they were safely gone, I returned to the house, ready to confront Lucy. She was in the kitchen when I walked in, her hair still damp from the shower, a mug of coffee in her hand. She greeted me with a smile, but it faltered when she saw the expression on my face. "Mark? Is something wrong?" "Sit down," I said, my voice steady but cold. "We need to talk." She hesitated, her eyes darting to the door as though considering an escape. Finally, she sat at the table, clutching her mug like a lifeline. "What is this about?" I placed the folder on the table, a plain manila envelope filled with the evidence Eric had gathered. "Open it." Her hands trembled as she reached for the folder. She flipped through the photos, her face draining of color with each one. The recordings were next, her own voice echoing back at her, laughing, confessing, conspiring. When she reached the final piece, the hotel receipt with her name and William's signature, she dropped the papers as though they burned her. I can explain, she began, her voice barely above a whisper. Don't, I interrupted. Don't insult me by pretending there's an explanation that justifies this. Tears welled in her eyes, but I felt no sympathy. How long? I demanded. How long have you been lying to me? She looked away, unable to meet my gaze. A few months, she admitted. It just happened. It didn't just happen, I snapped. You made a choice. Over and over again, you chose to betray me, to betray our family. I didn't mean to hurt you, she said, her voice breaking. I love you, Mark. I love our family. Love? I laughed bitterly. Is that what you call sneaking around with another man? Is that what you call tearing our family apart? She sobbed, burying her face in her hands, but I didn't let her wallow. Do the kids know? I asked, my tone sharp. Her head shot up. No. They don't know anything. Please, Mark, don't tell them. I leaned forward, my voice low and firm. I won't. But they'll know something is wrong when you're not here anymore. What? She whispered, her eyes wide with panic. You're leaving, I said. Today. I've already spoken to my lawyer. The divorce papers are ready, and I've filed for full custody. You'll have visitation rights, but I won't let you poison our children with your lies. Mark, please, she begged, reaching for my hand, but I pulled away. It's over, Lucy, I said, standing. Pack your things and leave. You can stay with William, if he'll have you. Her sobs turned to wails as she realized the gravity of her situation, but I didn't waver. I had spent too long drowning in her deceit, and now it was time to surface, to breathe freely again. By the end of the day, she was gone. The house felt emptier, but also lighter, as though a weight had been lifted. The kids came home from my sisters, and I hugged them tightly, vowing to protect them from the pain their mother had caused. That night, as I sat alone in the living room, I allowed myself to grieve, not for Lucy, but for the life we had lost. The betrayal had shattered my trust, but it hadn't broken me. I was still standing, and I would rebuild, not just for myself, but for Emma and Daniel. They deserved a father who could be strong, even when the world felt like it was crumbling. The battle was far from over, but the first step had been taken. The truth was out, and now, it was time to move forward. Months passed after Lucy's departure, and life slowly found a new rhythm. The children adjusted remarkably well, buoyed by the love and stability I worked tirelessly to provide. I threw myself into parenting, work, and rebuilding the pieces of my life that her betrayal had shattered. The emptiness left by her absence began to fill with a sense of purpose and newfound strength. Though I had assumed the worst of her decisions were behind us, Lucy wasn't content to disappear quietly. Despite her shame, she fought the divorce tooth and nail, dragging proceedings out in hopes of salvaging some part of her narrative. Her lawyer pushed for joint custody, claiming that the affair was a mistake, not a reflection of her capabilities as a mother. I held my ground, presenting the evidence I'd meticulously gathered. The judge sided with me, granting me full custody of Emma and Daniel, with limited visitation for Lucy. It was during this time that the surprise came, an unexpected visitor at my office one rainy afternoon. A woman in her 40s, impeccably dressed and carrying a quiet authority, introduced herself as Margaret Fellows, William's wife. "Mark, may I have a moment?" she asked, her voice calm but firm. I gestured for her to sit, taken aback by her presence. "What can I do for you, Mrs. Fellows?" "I'll get straight to the point," she said, folding her hands in her lap. "I know about my husband's affair with your wife." The air seemed to leave the room. "I see," I managed, unsure of what she wanted from me. Margaret's expression softened, but her resolve was unwavering. "You're not alone in this. William's infidelity has been a constant in our marriage, though this time it's particularly egregious. I came to you because I believe you deserve the truth. Her words hit me harder than I expected. I think I already know the truth, I said bitterly. Your husband seduced my wife, and she betrayed our family. It's worse than that, Margaret said, sliding a folder across the desk. William has a pattern, Mark. He preys on women like Lucy, not because he loves them, but because he enjoys the control. He promises them everything, and then he takes it all away. I opened the folder cautiously, finding documents, photos, and correspondence that painted a chilling picture. William had a history of affairs with married women, all of whom he discarded once the thrill wore off. Some had lost their marriages, others their careers. A few had even been driven to financial ruin after he manipulated them into compromising positions. He's done this before? I asked, my voice shaking with anger. Margaret nodded. And he'll do it again. But I've had enough. I'm filing for divorce and taking him for everything he's worth. I thought you might want to know who you were really dealing with. As I absorbed her words, a dark idea began to form. William had manipulated Lucy and shattered my family, but now I had an opportunity to turn the tables. Thank you for telling me this, I said, meeting her gaze. I think it's time we both got some justice. Over the next few weeks, Margaret and I collaborated in secret, pooling our resources to expose William's predatory behavior. She used her connections within his company to uncover financial improprieties and hidden affairs, while I provided documentation of his relationship with Lucy. Together, we built an airtight case. The day of reckoning came during a high-profile board meeting at William's company. Margaret, as the majority shareholder, had called the meeting under the guise of discussing a potential merger. Instead, she presented our evidence to the stunned executives, revealing William's misconduct in painstaking detail. The photos, emails, and testimonies left no room for doubt. By the end of the meeting, William was ousted from his position, his reputation in tatters. Margaret's divorce proceedings ensured he would walk away with little more than his name, and even that was stained. Watching him squirm as his empire crumbled was more satisfying than I expected, though it didn't erase the pain he had caused. As for Lucy, the fallout from the scandal was unavoidable. Her role in William's affairs became public knowledge, and she lost her job as a result. She called me in tears, begging for forgiveness, but I had none left to give. This is your mess, Lucy, I told her. You chose him. Now you can deal with the consequences. Despite the chaos, I felt a strange sense of closure. The man who had upended my life was finally held accountable, and I could move forward without the weight of his shadow looming over me. Margaret and I stayed in touch, bonded by our shared experience. She had found freedom in her own way, and I admired her strength. One evening, as I sat with Emma and Daniel, watching them laugh over a board game, I realized that the storm had finally passed. My life wasn't the same as it had been, but it was whole again. And in the quiet moments of rebuilding, I found something I hadn't expected: hope for the future.